I am not a first-generation college graduate. I didn't grow up in poverty, and I haven't endured the historic prejudices that people of color in this country have. And when I took on a new job at a place called Summer Search 2 years ago, my motivation to close the gap between the privilege in my life and the scarcity in so many other lives around me started to grow. And even though I've worked in global development for close to 15 years and traveled the world and seen inequity in many, many places, it was actually here in the Bay Area with my work with Summer Search that transformed me from being an observer and an empathizer of low-income communities to being a fierce advocate of them. Summer Search is a national college success organization. We work with low-income youth and their families across the country to help them cultivate the skills and the traits they need to build their college-bound pathways. Through mentorship, college advising, and summer trips, we're working with students starting in the sophomore year and all the way through to college graduation. Almost 100% of our students are high school graduates and first-generation college-bound leaders. 7 out of 10 of our students are college graduates, compared to just 1 in 10 of their low-income peers. And in addition to these impressive statistics and the stories that I've had the privilege of hearing from our students and alumni, Summer Search is a special place because it triggered my empathy in a big way. I'll explain. So shortly after I came on board at Summer Search, my team and I did a day-long training focused on diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And we worked with a facilitator who opened the session with a series of icebreakers, and one of them was called Agree or Disagree. And she set up the room where half the room was the agree side, half the room was the disagree side, and she would make a statement, and you'd have to gravitate towards one side or the other based on your experience, your opinion, and so forth. And the intention was to surface our similarities and our differences and begin a conversation about how perspectives are built based on our communities of origin, our gender, our race, our income, and so forth. And we did this 5 or 6 times, and then she made the statement, "Police are here to protect me." And I watched as the majority of my team gravitated to the disagree side of the room. They disagreed with the statement, "Police are here to protect me." Now, my team is a diverse, talented group of people who have been working in the youth development space and with low-income communities for a very long time. And in fact, some of them, their personal stories reflect the stories of our students. And so in fact, the work that they do at Summer Search is truly their life's work. And I could tell, based on the concentration of staff on that side of the room, I mean really all but 2 or 3 of us, that they had stories about police. Whether they were their own stories or of their families or of our students or of our students' families, I knew they had stories about police that were negative, if not actually harmful. And I was struck by how blank my experience was. I was literally standing in the middle of the room, and I wanted to belong. I wanted to go to the disagree side with them. I wanted to flag my solidarity. I wanted to flag my awareness that our law enforcement system was highly questionable, especially with so much police brutality in the news. Oscar Grant in Fruitvale, Michael Brown in Ferguson, way too many casualties to name here. And yet I could not think of a single story that affected me personally or affected my family or my friends that would authentically justify my going to the disagree side of the room. And so that was a blind spot for me. And it was one of many that I've had over the last 2 years at Summer Search. And the discovery of blind spots is such a humbling, important experience, and one that I was very grateful for in that moment, and still grateful for. And you know, there's something to jumping into experiences, receiving feedback, recognizing how you show up and how you don't show up based on past experiences and so forth. And hopefully what results in that whole process is an increased self-knowledge and self-awareness that you and hopefully everyone around you benefits from. And yet, I will say that even though I had a lack of experience in that moment with the statement, police are here to protect me, and with the team and so forth, it didn't mean I had a lack of empathy, nor an inability to be effective at making change. I am no less saddened or outraged when I see the patterns of inequity surface here in the Bay Area, and always the people who are the have-nots are people who are poor, and just as often people of color. And having worked at some research, I've been able to cultivate that lexicon where I can name the gap between the privilege in my own life and the lack of privilege in so many others, rather than feel ashamed or feel guilty of it. And amazingly, it just motivates me more to throw my shoulder into our work more and more. And so that's a moment in time of something that I've really learned in my work at Summer Search, and I've learned so many things, and there are a few that I want to share with you. And the first is, I discovered that I have just a little bit more in common with our students than I would have thought when I started. I grew up on country club lawns, access to private swimming pools, private education. I've grown up with a lot of privilege, there's no question about it. But my parents were never wealthy. They've always struggled financially, they still do. I can remember when our phone would be turned off because they couldn't pay the bill. I can remember some birthdays and holidays that were just sparse in occasion, ceremony, gifts. I can remember all the dinner time conversations where I heard the phrase, "Hey guys, money's tight right now." And right now was all the time. When I was in college, I'd be one of the last students to leave campus and one of the first to come back before a new semester started. And the reason was that time in between semesters when you don't have class obligations, and if you're a full financial aid kid, work-steady kid like me, you know, those days that are totally free are just a gold mine with regard to, you know, working and generating income and spending money, something I had to do. And so when I hear our students talk about the challenge of balancing an academic workload and having to deliver, if only because their financial aid is contingent upon it, and then alongside work 1 or 2 jobs on campus as well because they have to generate money, that resonates, frankly, in a way that I had forgotten. But I do get that. The second thing I've learned is just having the exposure to what it looks and feels like to hover at the poverty line in the Bay Area. It is tough, tough living. It's really hard. And yet our students are thriving because of who they are, because of their families, and because of us, because of the support and the mentorship and the guidance Summer Search provides. And obviously, I'm very proud of Summer Search. I'm a little bit biased too, because I still work there. But I really believe in what we do. And yet, with all that said, I will always marvel at the inequity that our students have to navigate because of factors beyond their control. For example, I can still remember the very first time I was building the budget for our next fiscal year for the team. And our director of college access said, almost offhandedly, she said, "Make sure you budget for enough food for the college workshops because our kids are hungry." And it just was this wave of recognition of, oh, right, this is what poverty alleviation feels like. You have to budget for food because the people you're working with are hungry. And that's a very real feeling. I think that there's no shortage of space in the empathy dialogue. I think there's always going to be enough room for everyone. And it's because there's no shortage of people feeling for others, and that's such a good thing. I certainly know from my own history that there's always more to the story with anyone than you can see, and that it's going to require some curiosity to get under the layers. And yet I think empathy only goes so far, actually. I don't think empathy pays the rent or creates a college degree. I don't think it creates equity, at least not by itself. How we activate our empathy, how we show up as professionals, as leaders, as voters, as human beings, how we activate our empathy in service to those less fortunate, that's the conversation I want to be a part of. Low-income communities don't need the sympathy from higher-income communities. They need opportunity, they need access to capital, they need a chance. And low-income youth, they don't need pity, they need support and mentorship and guidance, just like any other teenager. President Barack Obama has a great line about empathy that I just love. He says, how important it is to look at the world through the eyes of those who are different from us. The child who's hungry, the steelworker who's been laid off, the entire family who lost their entire life when the storm came to town. He says, when you start thinking this way, it becomes harder not to act. It becomes harder not to help. And that last part, harder not to help, strikes a deep vein in me. What I've learned at Summer Search is that activating our empathy in service to our low-income youth, that's what's going to change the starting lines for them. And one quick example that I'll share of a student of ours and how she's activated her empathy. She's a first-generation college graduate, first to earn her law degree in her family too, has focused her legal practice on urban housing and legal services for children in the Bay Area, has had a very positive experience with Summer Search when she was in high school and college. And she attributes that experience to what she's doing now. That chain reaction, that partnership with Summer Search is now enabling more lives to be forever changed. But that chain reaction isn't just about one person or just about me or just about one organization. I think those opportunities for chain reactions are available to all of us. And I'll just give two personal examples. You know, when I host a dinner party for colleagues or for friends, something that I like to do often is hire a local catering company called Alicia's Tamales. And the reason is because Alicia is a graduate of a local incubator kitchen program that works with low-income men and women and trains them in hospitality and restaurant management skills. So Alicia is a small business owner. She's looking for customers, she's trying to build her market, and I care about supporting local businesses, and I care about good, locally made food made with a lot of love, which is what she provides. And so that's me activating empathy. I'm showing up as a deliberate consumer. Another example, when I went to India last year, I went with a local tourism company that works only with local guides, local restaurants, and local hotels. By design, the business model is focused on generating and maintaining income in local communities. And so again, as a traveler, not only am I having an amazing time, but I'm supporting local communities in a very real, substantive way by allocating my purchasing power there. And these are communities that I may never visit again and never know personally. So I just share a handful of those experiences from Summer Search and from my own life as tokens of where activating empathy, I think, is possible for all of us. How we show up as professionals, what we do with our time and talent, how we organize our philanthropy, how we show up as consumers, all those things offer ways to activate our empathy and to close the opportunity gap here in the Bay Area. Please join me. Thank you.